From the distant reaches of the Zyphor Nebula, our observation arrays fixated on a blue and green world that had once seemed trivial. Earth, its oceans shallow, its atmosphere tenuous, its people small, chaotic, inconsequential. The Xyrrans had long catalogued its history, its wars, its plagues, confident that this species would never escape the predictable cycles of survival and failure. Yet, even as we adjusted our instruments, the first anomalies appeared. Survival rates defied expectation. Cities rose from devastation with efficiency, alien in concept. Atmospheric shifts occurred in ways that suggested conscious, coordinated intervention. Our most sophisticated sensors failed to track the subtleties of their activity. They were everywhere and nowhere, moving in a manner that suggested purpose far beyond instinct. On the streets below, humans operated as if one organism. Militia units assembled without visible leadership, resources were allocated with uncanny precision, and infrastructure repairs happened faster than any system could predict. Signals we assumed were noise, the faint hum of generators, the staggered movement of transport convoys, revealed hidden patterns when observed over days, weeks, months. They communicated without detectable frequency, spoke in gestures our translators could not decode, and yet every decision harmonized with a broader, invisible strategy. We interpreted it as chaos at first. Then, when patterns crystallized, it became clear this chaos was deliberate, structured, and terrifyingly intelligent. Our fleets in neighboring systems prepared contingency strikes, expecting the inevitable collapse of this fledgling species. Reports flew back and forth, confidence waning with each new anomaly, and yet nothing broke. Hurricanes tore through coastal settlements, yet humans rebuilt, learned, and adapted faster than our models accounted for. Plagues ravaged their population, yet survival persisted beyond logical limits. We whispered among ourselves in uncertainty. Could it be that the species we assumed fragile was something else entirely? Something patient, calculating, inevitable? Every day of observation added weight to the realization. Humanity's silence spoke louder than war cries. The galaxy had planned to crush them. Already it was too late. The first faint tremor of dread began to ripple through the ranks of the Xyrrans, and by the time we understood the scale, the humans were already shaping the future on a foundation we could barely perceive. Shadows gathered over Terra, and in those shadows, an intelligence waited, silent, inexorable, and utterly unknowable. Across the void of interstellar space, human colonies, once dismissed as inconsequential outposts, began to reveal a resilience that defied the Xyrrans' most confident assessments. From orbital observation platforms, we noted logistical networks appearing overnight, supply lines that traversed light years with uncanny precision, and shipyards that materialized almost invisibly, hidden from all standard detection. At first, we assumed these were minor adjustments, local improvisations, but patterns emerged too quickly, too deliberately, to be random. Every maneuver, every relocation of fleets or resources aligned with contingencies no alien strategist could predict. Our sensors picked up no communication signals that could explain this coordination. Human convoys moved like ghosts, silent, disciplined, spectral in the void. Fleets masked as civilian traffic followed trajectories that suggested a higher understanding, a system-wide design invisible to those outside. We attempted calculations, simulations, probability matrices, yet each human action rendered our projections obsolete. The more we observed, the more we understood the depth of our misjudgment. Humans were not reacting. They were executing a pre-existing plan spanning entire systems. A game whose board extended light years. Each colony functioned as a node in a galactic network, a web of preemptive dominance that allowed them to absorb shocks and exploit weaknesses faster than any external force could anticipate. The Xyrrans, confident in centuries of analytical superiority, felt the first pangs of doubt. We could perceive scale, movement, and resource allocation, but the method remained hidden. The structure was clear, yet the design was beyond comprehension. Human expansion was not a haphazard growth. It was a deliberate, strategic orchestration. Already, fear took root among alien ranks. Where we had assumed humans would bend under pressure, they adapted. Where we expected hesitation, we found foresight. Where we believed control was possible, we encountered inevitability. Humanity's quiet expansion, measured, deliberate, invisible, was rewriting the rules of engagement across the galaxy. Every pause was calculated, every maneuver precise, and every colony a step closer to demonstrating that the species we underestimated had been preparing its ascendancy all along. As we scrambled to adjust projections, a terrifying realization settled over the observation decks. Humans were not merely expanding, they were already executing their plan. And the galaxy, arrogant in its assumptions, had no inkling of what was coming next. The neutral station of Velora gleamed like a jewel in the void, a hub of diplomacy for alien species across multiple sectors. From the observation decks above, we, the Xyrrans, watched the humans arrive, measured, composed, silent. Their every movement seemed deferential, heads bowed, hands folded, voices monotone and calm. To the assembled alien delegates, it appeared as submission, as the predictable compliance of a species still naive to interstellar politics. Applause and ceremonial bows met their entry, and the gallery whispered predictions of humanity's acquiescence. Yet even from this distance, subtle anomalies betrayed them. A flicker in an eye, a barely perceptible twitch of a finger resting on concealed devices, a glance that lingered too long, not at their peers, but at us. Each movement, each pause, each deliberate inflection carried a weight beyond understanding. Human delegates communicated in silent, almost imperceptible signals, layering strategy beneath the polished veneer of diplomacy. Their performance was flawless, humility perfected into weaponized theater. What we interpreted as restraint was mastery in disguise. What we saw as compliance concealed calculation, foresight, and preparation. As the treaty discussions unfolded, we attempted to decode their intentions, to predict their responses. Every hypothesis failed. Each clause of the treaty, each handshake, each exchange of documents was carefully orchestrated. By the end of the session, humans had extracted intelligence not through threats, not through violence, but through the subtle manipulation of perception. They had gauged reactions, measured caution, and cataloged every weakness across the attending empires. The hall erupted in applause as the signatures were exchanged. Delegates stood, congratulated themselves on a diplomatic triumph, unaware that they had become actors in a play entirely directed by humans. And then the chilling truth crystallized. The humans had already claimed their first victory. Not with fleets, not with fire, not with death, but through anticipation, observation, and control. They had turned diplomacy into a weapon, and we were already disarmed by their silent mastery. The galaxy believed it had bound them. In reality, humans had bound the galaxy to the inevitable. As the final handshakes were exchanged, a quiet murmur ran through the observation deck. Humans were already several moves ahead. And the true reckoning had not yet begun. We had believed them docile, predictable, contained. The humans were a species to observe, to catalog, to underestimate with impunity. And then the truth revealed itself, not in a single moment, but in a cascade of impossibilities that shattered every assumption. Intelligence reports, once routine, now screamed of hidden arsenals, experimental fleets, and planetary defenses operating beyond the laws of physics we thought immutable. The peaceful treaty, celebrated by alien civilizations as the pinnacle of diplomacy, was revealed for what it truly was: a veneer, a calculated performance designed to lull the galaxy into complacency, while humans prepared in silence, studying, mapping, and anticipating every maneuver we might attempt. We examined communications we had long dismissed as routine chatter. There were codes embedded, layers imperceptible to non-human cognition, sequences that transformed the simplest messages into vast strategic directives. Every contingency we could imagine had been predicted, every weakness measured, every possible counter-strategy preemptively neutralized. We realized, too late, that we had been playing checkers while humans had been orchestrating a multi-dimensional chessboard across light years. The revelation hit simultaneously across the galaxy. Systems considered secure were quietly fortified. Fleets moved with synchronized precision. And technologies, once deemed speculative, were now fully operational. Our diplomats, our generals, our scientists all confronted the same terrifying truth. A species we assumed reactive, pliable, and manageable was, in fact, an apex predator lying dormant, waiting for the opportune moment to strike, and then the announcement, simple yet catastrophic, echoed across every observation deck and command nexus. "Congratulations! You just declared war on the galaxy's deadliest species!" The words hung in the void like a detonated bomb. Fear gripped every mind, from council chambers to command stations. Threats, diplomacy, intimidation, all were rendered meaningless in an instant. Humans were no longer a species to negotiate with. They were a force of nature, patient and deliberate, a predator whose silence had masked centuries of preparation. For the first time in millennia, the galaxy trembled. Every system, every fleet, every empire suddenly understood the cost of arrogance, the penalty of misjudgment. And in that tremor, we sensed it. The patient predator had decided the time for subtlety had ended. Humanity's patience had expired, and the galaxy had unknowingly signed its first sentence. The fleets shifted, silently, like shadows threading through starlight. The first strike had not yet come, yet every empire already feared it. The hunt had begun, and no corner of the galaxy would remain untouched. The first strike arrived without warning. Human fleets, long dismissed as exploratory and inconsequential, emerged from the void in perfect formation across multiple sectors. Hundreds of vessels, each uniquely optimized, gliding in synchronized perfection, their movements so precise they seemed orchestrated by a single consciousness. Alien sensors strained, unable to track the speed, the coordination, the scale. Probabilities collapsed. Models failed. Predictions shattered. What had been assumed manageable, contained, was suddenly unstoppable. From orbital observation platforms, we watched as attack vectors unfolded with surgical clarity. Civilian populations, where affected, were spared unnecessary harm, yet infrastructure, communications hubs, power grids, supply depots, was dismantled with devastating efficiency. Nothing was wasted, nothing random. Every strike, every deployment carried a deliberate purpose. The humans did not merely fight. They reshaped the battlefield before it could resist, asserting control through precision and psychological mastery rather than sheer force. Across planetary command centers, Xyrran generals and allied officers scrambled to interpret the movements. Signals emitted from human vessels interfered with sensors, manipulating perception, sowing doubt, and exploiting miscalculations. Entire defensive lines folded before their first engagement, not because of overwhelming numbers, but because human strategy anticipated every reaction, every hesitation, every predictable error. Observation decks once filled with confidence now trembled with disbelief. Reality itself seemed malleable under the humans' orchestration. Each victory claimed by the humans was stark, devoid of triumphalism or propaganda, cold, inevitable, preordained. Fleet after fleet, station after station, alien commanders realized the terrifying truth. Humanity was not merely responding to threats or seeking territory. They were asserting dominion, enforcing a design older than the fleets that confronted them. What had been dismissed as simple survival was, in truth, the execution of a strategy spanning decades, centuries, perhaps longer. The Xyrrans, arrogant and assured, felt the first pangs of dread. Humanity had become the silent predator of the galaxy, and its hunt had begun. Every signal, every movement, every strike whispered the same truth. Resistance was futile, inevitability was absolute, and the galaxy would bend to human will. As systems fell and fleets vanished into the void, a quiet transmission echoed across observation platforms, untraceable and unbreakable. Humanity was already several moves ahead. And the next phase, the phase none could anticipate, was about to begin. The galaxy had long relied on coalitions, alliances spanning centuries, forged through diplomacy, shared conflict, and mutual convenience. The Xyrrans, confident in their mastery of interstellar politics, assumed these federations unshakable. Yet as humans expanded their influence, the foundations of trust began to crumble, almost imperceptibly. There were no grand battles at first, no bombardments of entire planets, only the quiet unraveling of what had been deemed eternal. Human strategy operated on a level beyond brute force. Through carefully timed maneuvers, subtle probes, and indirect interventions, they revealed fractures within federations. Dissent that had been ignored for generations suddenly flared. Fears long suppressed became manifest. Leaders questioned allies' intentions. Commanders doubted orders. Diplomats turned inward, anxious for their own survival. Every hesitation, every whispered uncertainty, every pause in deliberation was a thread in the tapestry the humans wove. When strikes did occur, they were surgical, almost imperceptible, strategic disasters. Infrastructure disruptions and precision sabotage that exposed weaknesses without provoking overt retaliation. Information carefully leaked seeded mistrust. The Xyrrans watched in disbelief as centuries-old alliances disintegrated not through combat, but through revelation. It was as if humans understood the architecture of loyalty and fear and used it as deftly as any weapon. Each movement was deliberate, a probe into the psyche of allies and rivals alike. Entire sectors descended into paralysis, leaders unable to act decisively, paralyzed by the unseen force threading through the cosmos. Humanity's mastery extended beyond ships and weapons. It was in psychology, diplomacy, and inevitability itself. Where we expected chaos to crumble their resolve, humans thrived, transforming disorder into momentum. And in every observation, one truth became undeniable. Alliances are only as strong as the fear and respect they inspire, and humans commanded both, without ever raising a single overt threat. As federations fractured and sectors froze in indecision, the Xyrrans faced a grim realization. The humans were not simply conquering space, they were reshaping the galaxy's very order. And no alliance could withstand the quiet precision of their ascendancy. Across the shattered systems of the outer sectors, the true scale of human capability was revealed. Worlds once thought secure were left in ruins, yet not by brute force alone. Alien scientists documented technologies that defied known physics. Orbital networks disabled, planetary shields bypassed, entire defense grids rendered obsolete without a single direct confrontation. Each maneuver, each deployment, executed with such precision that observation teams struggled to track the flow of events. Humans did not announce their presence. They did not require spectacle. Their dominance was systemic, adaptive, and invisible until its effects rippled outward, leaving awe and terror in equal measure. From distant satellites and observation platforms, the Xyrrans cataloged fleets moving in ghost-like coordination. Decisions were executed with near-perfect anticipation of alien responses, as if the humans had foreseen every contingency. Commanders calculated probability matrices that failed at every turn. Even minor adjustments, small tactical choices carried galaxy-spanning consequences. Each action, advance, retreat, restraint, was a calculated lesson designed to strengthen human dominance, weaken opposition, and reshape expectations. Where humans appeared to pause, it was strategy. Where they appeared to err, it was design. The galaxy's traditional measures of success, force, numbers, and aggression, no longer applied. Observation decks filled with dread as every skirmish. Every strike reverberated through political and economic structures light years away. Colonies adapted, crumbled, or capitulated not because of overwhelming destruction, but because humans dictated the terms of engagement. Diplomats and generals, long confident in their predictive models, now questioned the very nature of strategy itself. There was no randomness in human action, only inevitability. The Xyrrans and allied species glimpsed a predator fully awakened, patient no longer, adaptive beyond calculation, and unbound by precedent. Humanity's mastery extended beyond warfare into a philosophy of dominance. Every interaction, every contingency, every system fell under their silent command. The galaxy trembled as realization spread. The apex predator had emerged. The quiet precision of humanity had become an unstoppable tide. Every corner of the galaxy awaited the next move, yet none could anticipate it fully. The age of inevitability had begun, and the universe itself seemed to pause in dread. The final chapter of human ascendancy unfolded across the galaxy, a revelation both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Planets that had once resisted fell not merely to fleets or weapons, but to an invisible mastery that transcended conventional warfare. Psychological manipulation, environmental control, and precision strategy coalesced into an unstoppable force. Civilization after civilization reconsidered its place, its priorities, its very survival. Fleets that had boasted invincibility now lay silent in orbit or scattered in retreat, unable to counter the inevitability that pressed upon them. The Xyrrans, once confident in their comprehension, their algorithms, their predictive models, felt the weight of their miscalculation. Humanity was no longer a species. It was a phenomenon. Every technology, every doctrine, every nuance of culture had been accounted for, anticipated, absorbed, or neutralized. Even the smallest details, the timing of a planetary strike, the appearance of mercy, the concealment of strategic intent, demonstrated foresight that surpassed millennia of calculation. Patience, cruelty, and precision combined into a strategy that reshaped not just battles, but the very fabric of galactic order. From observation platforms to shattered capitals, alien leaders realized the permanence of this transformation. Mercy had always been temporary, a calculated tool. War was inevitable, yet in its inevitability lay human dominance. The galaxy had learned a painful lesson. Underestimating humanity was fatal, challenging them catastrophic. Resistance was absorbed, redirected, or annihilated without need for fanfare. And through it all, the silent message reverberated clearly. Humans were not to be defeated, negotiated with, or restrained. They were to be respected, feared, and acknowledged as the ultimate apex predators. Entire civilizations recalibrated their strategies and ambitions in quiet surrender. The cosmic order had shifted irrevocably. No fleet, no coalition, no intelligence network could reverse what had been set into motion. As the last vestiges of resistance faded, the galaxy trembled under the certainty of human supremacy. A new era had begun, one in which inevitability itself bore the mark of humanity.